Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing very well on this wonderful Sunday here, and at least the sun is coming out. Many of you probably are already aware of this, but last week I took a very special trip to Hawaii. Ooh, yeah, Oahu. At the, now, full disclosure, I did go there for work. I wasn't just, now of course, yeah, everyone deserves a vacation. And I actually happened to bring back a friend with me. No, I'm just kidding. He came in on a later flight, but it is with great pleasure and privilege that I introduce our special guest speaker, Reverend Blayne Higa. But actually, before I do that, I have to tell you an incredibly funny story during my time in Hawaii, and it's very short. So for the first couple of days, I actually decided to indulge a little bit, and I stayed at the Waikiki Hilton Village Resort. How many of you have been there before on Oahu? Yeah, isn't it a nice place? Oh my gosh, it's too easy to spend money there. You don't need to go off the site to do all of your omiyage shopping. It is wonderful. Anyways, one morning, as I was sitting and eating breakfast and looking at the beautiful ocean and the beautiful beach, I saw someone walk by. And it was like, hey, that looks like Kevin Ikeda. Who, for those of you who don't know, is a member of this temple. And I said, but then I was thought to myself, well, I'm in Hawaii. I think there could be a lot of guys who look like Kevin Ikeda here, right? But I had to be sure. So I took out my cell phone and I dialed it and I called. And sure enough, the guy who was walking by picked up his phone. Hello? And I said, Kevin, are you in Hawaii? Yeah. Turn around. Oh, sensei! I can't go anywhere without seeing one of you. Even this far to Hawaii. Oh my goodness. But then it was a pleasure because I was asked by Bishop Umitani to teach a 2-day seminar at the Hawaii Betsuin along the Pali Highway. And of course, one of the main people who set this up was my very special friend, Reverend Blayne Higa, who I know incredibly well, whether he liked it or not, because he and I were at the Institute of Buddhist Studies together. So he had to live with me in the same house for 2.5 years. So most of you can only stand me for like 1 week at a time. Can you imagine living with me like every day? But needless to say, Reverend Blayne Higa and I developed a special friendship, and he and I have always remained in contact ever since. But again, because he had to put up with me for how many years, every single time I call him on the phone now to like ask him for a favor or ask him something, right? He picks up like this and he says, "Hello." That's how he says hello to me. So, but let me give you a small introduction to Reverend Blayne Higa. Reverend Blayne Higa is the current resident minister of the Kona Hongwanji Buddhist Temple on the Big Island. Do you all know where Kona is? Okay, wonderful. He holds a Master of Divinity from the Institute of Buddhist Studies in Berkeley, California, with a focus on Shin Buddhist ministry and chaplaincy. He's actually contributed to Lion's Roar and Buddha Dharma and frequently speaks and leads seminars at the Buddhist communities throughout Hawaii and across the country. For those of you who do not know, Lion's Roar and Buddha Dharma Tricycle, Lion's, all of those are really famous Buddhist publications. And it's actually kind of a big deal to get published in those to have your articles published in those readings. Reverend Blayne received Tokudo ordination and Kyoshi certification from Hongwanji in Kyoto, Japan, and he also currently sits as the head of the Buddhist Education Center on Hawaii as well. Before entering ministry, he had careers in state government and the nonprofit sector for over 17 years. He holds a Master of Public Administration and a certificate in Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and he received a BA from Willamette University in Oregon. And so Reverend Blayne has much life experience as well in the state government and the nonprofit sector. And even, it's amazing, we would actually sometimes go on hikes in Berkeley, California, in Tilden Park, and he would get calls, no joke, he would actually get phone calls from his old colleagues at the state capitol asking for advice. And he would take the call and he would tell them who to contact, which person to connect with, and help them navigate through this. And I said, there are people who have careers, giving out that kind of advice and then making those connections. Like, people make lots of money doing that, and you're dishing it out for free. And that's the type of person Reverend Blayne Higa is. So, without further ado, if you will all please join me in welcoming my very dear friend from the sunny islands of Hawaii, Reverend Blayne Higa.
Hi, good morning, everybody. And aloha. So, as Reverend Tadao had mentioned, we were longtime friends, and I've had to be with him again for these past 2 weeks now, both in Hawaii and here. But this time here, I'm trapped in his house. But it's wonderful to join you in celebrating the lives of Eshinni and Kakushinni, right? The wife and daughter of our founder, Shinran Shonin. Thank you to my good friend Tadao Koyama for inviting me to share with you today. So we know the saying, right? Is the glass half empty or is the glass half full, right? How many of us would say that we are on the half empty side? Yeah, right? How many of us would say that we're on the half full side? A little bit more, right? Oh, very good, both, right? And so this expression, right, is often used to determine, right, whether we have a pessimistic or optimistic outlook on life. However, as Buddhists, we understand that life is much more complex than simply being one thing or another. Right, black and white answers are easy, but they do not take into account the reality that is often much more subtle and nuanced. Our challenge is to see the glass as both half full and half empty, right, at the same time, reminding us that perception shapes how we respond to life's ups and downs. To realize that just as the water is contained in the glass, we are also securely held within Amida's compassionate embrace. Therefore, the question of whether the glass is half full or half empty becomes less important, because whatever situation we find ourselves in, right, we are always supported and sustained by the dynamic working of wisdom and compassion. The Buddha teaches that our lives are a series of causes and conditions that come together and fall apart in an endless cycle of transformation and change. We suffer because we desperately cling to the illusion that life should be permanent, unchanging, and the way we want it to be. However, we all understand that life isn't permanent and filled with dissatisfaction. The cycles of life goes on endlessly, right? We try to manage everything without losing hope and our inner resilience when all we can see is a half-empty cup. We are certainly living through very challenging times, which have helped us to see the Buddha's teachings of birth, old age, sickness, and death as timeless truths that can help us to stay steady on a ship navigating stormy waters. Accepting the groundlessness of our lives enables us to bend and to twist without breaking when everything keeps falling apart. The Dharma truly provides us with wisdom for living in these difficult and challenging and uncertain times. The Buddha teaches us to give praise and gratitude for the way life reveals itself in all of its beautiful complexities and contradictions. We live with the spirit of Gashou by bringing our hands together in reverence and thankfulness for everything that allows us to live and everything we experience. And when we perceive our challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles, we discover our inner strength and our ability to persevere and to thrive in difficult situations. The Dharma teaches us how to see ourselves and life clearly and with balance. Buddhism's focus on self-knowledge helps us develop wisdom which reduces our fear and of the unknown. There's an old fable from China or Tibet that illustrates the power of perspective. So long ago, in a country where the mountains are among the world's highest, there lived an old farmer and his son. The boy spent his days attending to the work of the farm and their one horse, a beautiful white stallion. After years of careful training, the horse ran swifter and smoother than any other in the region. But one day, father and son awoke to find their cherished animal missing. The son, heartbroken. Neighbors gathered around the two and lamented their great loss. But the father gazed calmly past the villagers to the surrounding high peaks. "We shall see," he said. "We shall see if this is good or if this is bad." After a week, the magnificent horse returned, followed by an equally fine wild mare. Father and son soon tamed the new animal. This time, the neighbors praised the old man's remarkable luck. He was not the wealthiest man, he was now the wealthiest man in town. He owned the two very best horses. But the farmer simply smiled and remarked, "Oh, of course, I'm pleased. But who knows if this is lucky or unlucky?" And so it came to pass that one day, while racing their splendid horses across the field, the son fell off and broke both his legs badly. While the boy's wounds were cleaned and splinted by the doctor, the villagers bemoaned the family's terrible misfortune. But the father, calm as ever, took comfort in his boy. "He is alive. That is all that counts," replied the old man. "His legs will heal in time. I cannot know if these injuries will turn out to be something good or something bad." The very next week, a battalion of soldiers marched into the village. A war to the north was underway, and all the young men of fighting age were needed immediately. Mothers and fathers gathered food and warm clothing for their boys with sorrowful goodbyes. They reluctantly let their sons join the soldiers. But alas, there was one boy in the village left behind in his bed, for it was obvious his wounds would take many months to heal. The neighbors envied the farmer's good fortune. Of all the young men in town, his son was the only one not taken to war. The old farmer looked across the fields at the two fine horses grazing. He looked at the lovely way the sun caught the tops of the jagged peaks in the distance, smiled, and said nothing at all. It's true, few of us can be like the old farmer, right? But this illustrates the power of perspective. The story reminds us that we can remain stable and balanced even when life is turbulent and chaotic. We can manage and handle anything that happens to us with confidence and with grace. Life is filled with beginnings and endings because it is constantly changing and evolving. There are no perfect answers, only better ones for the situations we face. We are also taught that no matter what good or bad happens in life, there are lessons in each that help us to grow as individuals. Ultimately, we should Live without fear or hesitation, but with clear-eyed optimism and resolve. I can't help think about how Eshinni and Kakushinni lived with this inner resilience and strength all their lives, facing many challenges and obstacles with courage, with clarity, and with grace, always confident in Amida Buddha's compassionate embrace. They lived perceiving the glass as both half empty and half full, guided by the wisdom of the Dharma. This is the life of spiritual freedom and joy that we find along the Nembutsu path, as taught by Shinran Shonin. That through the Dharma, we have the capacity to see life clearly and to find our inner resilience when it feels so out of balance. And so in closing, please join me in Gassho to recite the Nembutsu together, entrusting the all-inclusive wisdom and all-embracing compassion of Amida, the Buddha of infinite light and life, in gratitude, joy, and awareness. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Mahalo. So join me in Gassho to reflect on the words of Shinran Shonin from the hymns of the Pure Land Masters. My eyes being hindered by blind passions, I cannot perceive the light that grasps me, yet the great compassion, without tiring, illumines me always. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. So we are constantly reminded of how life can change suddenly and how impermanence manifests in both small and large ways, forming an endless cycle of transformation. From moment to moment, we experience both happiness and sorrow on this remarkable journey we call life. It's easy to appreciate change when we hit the jackpot in Vegas or at the Indian casino that Reverend Koyama likes to go to, or achieve our cherished goals, right? But it's definitely more difficult to value the challenges and the dark times, right? To appreciate them. Still, we often learn the most from these difficult moments in our lives. The challenge for us is to maintain a sense of calm and balance as we face numerous everyday struggles. How do we develop our inner resilience that helps us to stay steady when we encounter the inevitable bumps in the road of life? This year is quickly passing by, but it often feels like it's taking forever as we face crisis after crisis. The past few weeks have certainly pushed us to the edge of our comfort. However, taking refuge in the Buddha's teachings can help us to meet our challenges with wisdom, with compassion, with grace. Due to many overwhelming circumstances beyond our control, many people feel stuck, whether mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. There's a sense of weariness from the ongoing series of challenges we've had to face. It often feels like we're riding the same out-of-control roller coaster with no idea whenever it will ever slow down. The story we've been living has conditioned us to view life in a certain way and has caused us to respond accordingly. Right? We are seeing the glass as half empty more often these days. Shakyamuni believed in the power of the human mind to shape the world in which we live. The stories we create about our lives influence all our thoughts, our words, our actions. Therefore, the stories we tell about ourselves can either empower or weaken our ability to act. The current story of who we are limits our capacity to see opportunities and our potential for meaningful transformation and change. In his book, Community, The Structure of Belonging, the author Peter Block suggests that change is based on our ability to tell new stories about ourselves. We need to have a conversation that we have not had before, one that has the power to create something new in the world. This insight forces us to question the value of our stories, the positions we take, our love of the past, and our way of being in the world. He's asking us to reconsider the stories that keep us trapped in our lives and affirms the Buddha's timeless and hopeful wisdom, which is empowering and life-giving. In a message from the BCA Wheel of Dharma, Bishop Marvin Harada shares a wonderful message on changing our perspective. In it, he shares a conversation between the Dalai Lama and the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And he writes, one of the highlights of the video to me was when Tutu asked a question to the Dalai Lama saying, to paraphrase, you had to escape from your country, and your country was taken over, monasteries were destroyed, and many people were killed by the Chinese military. Why are you not morose? First, the Dalai Lama asks the translator what the word morose meant. And he was told it means sad. And the Dalai Lama said that he was sad, of course, but that in Buddhism, we have to shift our perspective. He said that because he was exiled, he has been given the opportunity to share the Dharma with the world in a way that he would never have been able to if he stayed in Tibet as the Dalai Lama. Instead of just staying angry, bitter, and morose over his situation, he shifted his perspective to see the positive side of the situation and how much he had loved being able to share the Dharma with the world. And Bishop Harada goes on to say, only the Dalai Lama can say something like that without any sense of bitterness, anger, or anger. How wonderful to be able to shift one's perspective in that manner, right? Many of us cannot shift our perspective that easily, right? We stay in our state of bitterness and anger, and we say things like, why did this terrible thing have to happen to me? I didn't do anything to deserve this awful situation. Isn't that how we react to the negative situations in our lives? Don't we flounder, even choosing to stay in such a state of anger and bitterness, rather than finding something positive about the situation? But through the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha, we are empowered to shift our perspective. We can realize our true self that comes from the other shore of enlightenment. It is this deep spiritual awakening that inspires us to follow, right, the Buddhist path, and we naturally live the bodhisattva activities of generosity, of discipline, of patience, of energy, of meditation and insight, the 6 paramitas. This is the work of the other shore, the working of enlightenment that appears in each moment of our daily lives. It is also the spirit of Ohigan, right, this time of transition, right, that we should reflect on and strive to embody every day. In his book, Awaken to Your True Self, the Eshinni Buddhist Way of Life, Dr. Hideo Yonezawa writes, moment to moment, we are living a life that is not easy to have. That is what the other shore is teaching us, the weight, the importance of each and every moment. Namo Amida Butsu teaches me the world of the true self, the self that comes from the other shore. It is a phrase that comes from the other shore. And he goes on to say, people who live only on this shore of samsara cannot understand the phrase Namo Amida Butsu. I think that a person who thinks the importance of the other shore for the first time begins to understand Namo Amida Butsu. To think that this shore is the real shore is to think backwards. Namo Amida Butsu teaches us how we should really be and how backwards we truly are. The Buddha's calling voice constantly urges us to wake up to our lives and the lessons that life has to offer us. The Nembutsu is the ultimate shift in perspective away from our ego toward the world of awakening. Each new day presents an opportunity to begin our journey of awareness and self-discovery, deeply rooted in the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. Gomonshu Kojun Otani, the spiritual head of the Nishi Hongwanji, writes, Amida's liberation, the dynamic working that takes us in, becomes the great foundational support in our lives. No longer are we led astray by our wavering and unrelenting concerns, worries, and anxieties that have kept us unsettled without peace of mind. Instead, there arises within us an abundance of energy, vitality, and peace that fills our hearts and minds. This is the life-giving power of the Nembutsu, which allows us to live genuinely, authentically, in each moment of our lives. In our tradition, we recite the Nembutsu, the name of Amida Buddha, in gratitude for this profound awakening to authentic living. We understand that Namo Amida Butsu is not a meaningless phrase, but a grand affirmation of life, revealing that each moment holds infinite significance and meaning. With this deep appreciation, we gain new strength and courage to live each moment with wonder and resolve. The Buddha's teaching help us to understand and navigate life with more kindness, with more compassion, and with equanimity. Namo Amida Butsu is a promise from Amida Buddha to embrace, never to abandon. Namo Amida Butsu holds us through both our joys and our sorrows, transforming our ignorance into wisdom, our greed into generosity, and our anger into love. The Nembutsu can help us to face life's challenges with greater confidence and peace of mind. When we feel overwhelmed by life's challenges, we often struggle to envision a different world. We get stuck in a story that disempowers our ability to change. Shinran Shonin, the founder of Shin Buddhism, experienced a spiritual slump from which he saw no way out of. Living with the old story of who he was limited his ability to see the dynamic working of wisdom and compassion in his life that was always present. Only by shifting his perspective was he able to finally experience the embrace of Amida's compassionate vow, which radically transformed his life. Shinran shares this appreciation for this new and profoundly hopeful story of spiritual awakening in one of his wasan, his poems from the Hymns of the Pure Land, or Hymns of the Pure Land Masters, in which he says, right, my eyes being hindered by blind passions, I cannot perceive the light that grasps me, yet the great compassion, without tiring, illumines me always, that there is always light in our darkest moments. Holding on so tightly to the old story that defined his life kept Shinran stuck and unable to change. Only by letting go of the story of who he thought he was could he be empowered to live authentically within a new life-giving story, enabled through Amida's light of wisdom and compassion. Reverend Gojun Shichiri, a Shin Buddhist priest who lived in Japan during the late 1800s, offers a deeply insightful teaching about the Nembutsu path. And he says, so when you store away 5 or 10 plates in a cabinet, you place sheets of paper between them so as to avoid breakage. Right? Similarly, to prevent mistakes in your worldly affairs, be sure to place the Nembutsu between them. Even if such mundane matters are fragile, the cushion of the Nembutsu keeps them safe and sound.
Therefore, to insert the Nembutsu throughout your daily life, be sure to do that. Namo Amida Butsu embodies boundless love and compassion that are always present in our lives. We are continually embraced and supported by its light. The Nembutsu provides comfort when we are sad and gives us strength when we need courage. It truly transforms the foundation and forms the foundation of our lives. The spiritual path of Nembutsu transcends hope and fear. It's a journey of venturing into the unknown, always moving forward with clear-eyed optimism and resolve. It's a path where no experience is ever wasted, because it remains the most excellent teacher, opening our hearts to the complex truths of the human experience and the reality of the Buddha's compassionate embrace. Buddhism offers us a path of ultimate optimism, where our challenges can become sources of profound spiritual awakening. When we trust in Amida's vow, which unconditionally embraces us, our natural courage and resilience rises up within us. Because we know that we are not alone, that we are never alone, even in our darkest moments. This is the power of Namo Amida Butsu, supporting us as we navigate life's ever-changing tides. Amida's light of wisdom and compassion shines as a beacon in the darkness, guiding us back to ourselves. We realize that we are never truly without hope or light when the Nembutsu is part of our daily lives. This is the kind of quiet strength and courage we need in our troubled world today. Despite the numerous hardships that they faced, Eshinni's faith in the Nembutsu remained strong. Later in her life, she wrote to her daughter in one of her letters, "I may be going to the land of bliss at any moment. In the land of bliss, we will all be able to see everything clearly. So I hope that you shall live the life of the Nembutsu and come to join me there." Eshinni and Kakushinni show the confidence and self-awareness of those who truly trust in Amida's compassionate vow. We owe them our deepest gratitude for creating the conditions that have enabled us to encounter these life-giving and life-transforming teachings of the Nembutsu, taught by Shinran Shonin. We recently transitioned from summer to fall on the equinox, when day and night are in perfect balance. In many ancient cultures, it's a time of celebration that reminds us of our connection to the rhythms and the cycles of the earth and the entire universe. Ohigan serves as a powerful metaphor for crossing over from the shore of ignorance, anger, and greed to the other shore of awakening, of finding spiritual balance in a world that is so often chaotic and out of control. This is a moment for us to reflect deeply on our true selves, which are often hidden beneath our ego. It is this ego self that keeps us trapped, stopping us from seeing possibilities and creating new stories for our lives. The Buddha's teachings serve as the remedy that dispels our ignorance, and guides us towards finding a life of awakening within this world of delusion. This is why during Ohigan, we reflect on cultivating spiritual balance by living the wisdom found in the Dharma. So, how does holding on to the old stories we tell about ourselves limit our ability to see challenges as opportunities? to see the glass as sometimes half full, to recognize the light that embraces and never lets go. How do our pride and ego keep us trapped in a life-limiting and disempowering narrative of who we believe we are versus who we can be? Only when we let go of our old story can we turn spiritual hopelessness into an empowered life of awakening. This is the authentic life of being born in the Pure Land. Our country desperately needs to change its current story of hate, violence, and contempt that we've been living. We have the power to do so if we try. Let's deeply reflect on the endless and ever-changing cycles of life and discover our inner resilience and ability to embrace new life-affirming stories that can transform our perspective and our lives. This is the power of the Buddha's teaching. This is the power of the Dharma to transform a life of suffering into a life of awakening. Never shying away from all that hurts and all that seeks to destroy us, right? And we can take that all in, transform it, to use that as the fuel, as the nutrients for our lives of awakening that we are truly living. This is the path of the Nembutsu. This is the path of journeying to the Pure Land, each and every moment of our lives. And so in closing, please join me in Gassho to recite the Nembutsu. In trusting in the dynamic working of all-inclusive wisdom and all-embracing compassion, we call the honored name of Amida, the Buddha of infinite light and life, with profound gratitude, abiding joy, and a heart-centered awareness for the miracle of each unrepeatable moment. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.